Welcome back to Dragonwings, everyone. We're going to start off on page 247 near the top. The last time we read, we learned really cool stuff about Uncle, about how he really intelligently persuade the demon leaders, which are just probably like the mayor and other people who are in charge of San Francisco, to allow them to stay in their original spot in Chinatown and rebuild after the fire and the earthquake. And kind of made them realize how much they needed them in their town, them being Chinese people. So it was pretty cool. So basically the last thing that we read on the top of page 247 said, to make a long story short, we won the same rights that the demon citizens had in rebuilding on their old sites. We're going to pick up from right there. Here we go. We sent out a call then. A call that was heard all around the demon land. Lefty's brother-in-law came down from Sacramento. He was a stones mason. White Deer's youngest brother came all the way north by train from Los Angeles. He was a carpenter. Handclap's young cousin twice removed came all the way from Colorado. He had no skills. He just had a strong back. But that was at his elder cousin's disposal. Uncle even got money from some kin and friends in the eastern provinces from whom he had not heard in 20 years. And we were not the only Tang people with kinsmen and friends. Every day the men came in by the dozens, dusty, tired men who had journeyed by foot and by wagon when they could not afford a train ticket. They would sit for a moment and stretch out their legs, revealing the holes worn into the soles of their boots. They would be covered from their boots to the crowns of their hats with dust. They would accept a cup of tea with a quiet nod of thanks, and maybe smile and maybe make a joke. And after they had finished their tea, they would pitch right in. They might work 16 hours a day without pay, expecting only the food they ate and the straw mats they slept on. We were friends and kinsmen in trouble. The company's days were filled with a cheerful shouting and singing and swearing and hammering. We were putting up a new building, one made of stone and guaranteed to last a century. It was hard work, but it was exhilarating, the kind of feeling that comes from being alive and taking part in some great common enterprise. Only Father seemed strangely unmoved by the experience. He worked as hard as everyone else, but he did so without spirit. Whenever Uncle talked about building an extra large room for Father to work in, Father always kept very quiet. Finally, 4 months after the earthquake, Father came by and found me helping to mark off wood for Handclap to saw. The Whitlaws are leaving today, he said. I told them we'd say goodbye. Poor Miss Whitlaw had lost her house in the fire, and so had lost her chief financial support. The money in her cash box was meant to help Robin through college. Miss Whitlaw's land might be worth something once the city was rebuilt, but that meant holding on to it for quite a while. In the meantime, she would have to support herself some other way. Miss Whitlaw had borne her losses with the courage that I had come to expect of her. She had cheerfully taken a job as a housekeeper to some demons over in Oakland across the bay. I put down the pencil and ruler and followed him without a word. We both washed up silently and put on some clean clothes. As we walked through the city toward the park, we could hear the incessant banging of hammers and the wheezing of saws. Wherever you went, you saw the same wooden frames going up, like the skeletons of houses waiting for their wooden flesh to be attached. It was a city waiting to be reborn. Father swung his head to the side to avoid being hit by a plank that a hurrying demon carried on his shoulder. He stared after the man. Look at him. I don't think he's learned anything from the earthquake. He's going to try to make things just like they were, until the next earthquake comes along, and then he'll just build another one. We walked along for a while. Houses don't mean much. It's the people inside them that are important, I said. Father grinned sardonically. Yes, and you no sooner get to like those people than they're dead, or they move away, like the Whitlaws. But we can meet other people, I pointed out. Father playfully tipped his hat forward so that it shaded his eyes. Yes, and you go on losing those new friends, and you make just like you lose the new house you build. Don't you want something better, purer, freer in this life? I don't think there is, I said doubtfully. Father pulled off his hat and smoothed his hair. I think an aeronaut is free. I think an aeronaut may be the freest of all humankind. But you don't have an aeroplane. I'll build one. And how will you live? I'll put on shows, and people will pay to see just how pure and free a man can live. He bit his lips thoughtfully. I'll make this my final test, Moonshadow. The final and truest measure of whether I'm worthy to become a dragon again. I had felt as lonely as I had that first day on the pier, looking at the crowd of strange, tang men. I was not only losing the Whitlaws, but Father as well. Why do you always have to change your life just when it looks like you're finally settling in? I asked. Dragons are able to change shape, and so must I. Do you understand? Father glanced over at me, and I dropped my eyes. Do you, Moonshadow? I still did not answer. Do you? I think Miss Whitlaw may be waiting. I hurried on. Miss Whitlaw had already folded her tent with the help of some of her neighbors and carted it off to the temporary army depot. Most of her things had already been stored away in her employer's home. She was wearing a traveling outfit, a long brown skirt with a kind of short cloak of the same material as her skirt. She had on a big hat, which was held to her head by a scarf that she had tied around her chin. I'm so glad to see you, she said. Robin was sitting on a crate, drumming the heels of her high-buttoned shoes against its side. I went over to her. She cocked her set head to one side. You look even darker than you did before. I've been out in the sun a lot, I said. Oh. Suddenly Robin took the book from her lap and thrust it into my hands. Here, she said, it's a gift for you. It was The Phoenix and the Carpet by E. Nesbit. It's the closest thing I could find about flying, she explained. I don't have anything that nice to give you, I said. It's all right, Robin said, pretending to be indifferent. I read that book so many times, I got tired of it. All I have is this. I gave her the carving of Monkey that Uncle had given me my first night there. Robin knew what it was, having seen it many times in our stable. By this time, too, I had told her many of the stories about him. He likes travelers. She turned it admiringly over in her hands. Thank you. I got tired of it, too. I grinned. We loaded the 2 suitcases Miss Whitlaw had onto the wagon and drove them down to the ferry building. We would arrange to sell her wagon and horse for her. There was always a need for a good horse and wagon over here now with the rebuilding. The whole trip was made in a long silence. In the years we had known them, we had grown probably as close as we could to demons. We made small talk in the large waiting room of the ferry building, which had more or less escaped the fire, though they had to rebuild parts of it. When the ferry boat was ready to leave, the gate, which looked like it belonged on a castle, went up with a rattle of chains. People were getting up all around us, suitcases in hand. Miss Whitlaw took Father's hand between hers. You stay true to your dream, Mr. Lee. I just know that one day I'll be going to a show with your name up on the banner. Then she turned to me. And you keep in touch, you hear? Or I'll personally walk back across the bay and skin you alive. I guess that goes for me too, said Robin. I hear you, I said. Impulsively, Miss Whitlaw leaned forward and kissed me on the cheek. She was blushing when she stood up again. Excuse me for the liberty, Moonshadow. Robin gave me a quick peck and waited defiantly for me to say something, but I did not. Miss Whitlaw picked up one of her suitcases. Robin took the other. We waited by the gateway, watching them walk through the dark tunnel, out into the bright light where the ferry boat rode the waves. They walked over the gangplank onto its deck. The gate came down with a rattling groan. The sailors cast off the rope and drew in the gangplank, and the water around the ferry boat churned white as the paddle wheels on its sides began to turn. I did not say much to Father as we rowed back to the Tang people's town. What could I say to a man whom I had come to love and respect, but who wanted to leave me? That night, Father got Uncle alone, and I sat down by them. Father turned to me. Moonshadow, you once asked me who or what caused the earthquake. I don't know. It could have been the gods, or dragons, or demons, or it could have simply been a natural event. It doesn't matter, supernatural or natural. It means the same. This life is too short to spend it pursuing little things. I have to do what I know I can and must do. Uncle banged his fist on the arm of his chair. Not that dang dream again. Dream or not, I can fly, Father said matter-of-factly. I can build a flying machine. Uncle looked grim. Even assuming you can build a flying machine and then make money flying it, what will you and your family eat while you're building the machine? It's time I thought of myself, Father asserted. Uncle was scandalized. Supposing your father and mother had thought of that, or suppose their fathers and mothers had thought of that before. That's cheating. Father sagged in his chair and rested his hands on his knees. A superior man admits the truth, Uncle snapped. I could see that Father was beat. He hung his head for the longest time, staring down at his hands. I could only think of some immortal who had suddenly woken one morning to find himself in a man's body and realized he was being punished. For the second time in my life, I made an important decision to be with him. I want to fly too, Father, I said. Stay out of this, Uncle snapped. Pardon me, Uncle, but you brought me into this. I looked at Father again. We should build the flying machine. Maybe you can make a living doing it. And while we're building it, we'll both get jobs. We'll all manage somehow. Father straightened a little. Despite what everyone says, a superior man can only do what he's meant to do, I said. Uncle laughed scornfully. Ha! Don't give me that nonsense. He's the only one I hear talking sense, Father said. Don't expect to come back here, either of you, Uncle warned us. He was hurt by our leaving him a second time. I don't have anything to do with fools. Please let me go with you, Father. I won't be any trouble at all, and you'll need help. Father put his hand on my shoulder. Yes, I know I'll need help. I was hoping you'd come along. Why didn't you ask then? It's not something you can ask. Then we'll go together, I said. Uncle looked at us. both hurt and confused. "Why?" he asked. "Why?" "It's something we both have to do," I tried to explain, but it was like trying to describe colors to a blind man. Uncle shoved his chair away from us and got up. "Get away from me," he said. I was sad about Uncle, but with Father's arm around me, I felt a warm glow inside of me even so. He was Windrider, and I was his son. Oh, what a good chapter. Windrider and Moonshadow are going to do it. They're going to live out their dream. It's so exciting. But poor Uncle, he's always getting left behind. We're going to pick up chapter 11 tomorrow. And also, I apologize if you can hear my dog snoring in the background. She's been next to me and I realize she's being kind of loud. So I apologize for that. Anyway, we'll start chapter 11 tomorrow.